Hello there, fellow riders. This is Sorvesteon in Riders of Icarus, and in this video I'm going to be talking about my tank Satina. A lot of you have been asking questions in the comments section about, how I get the health, the stats, the gear, and how I do all this stuff with Satina. So I'm going to be answering all of your questions, and I'm going to be showing you the gear that I have. I'm going to be telling you how I got that gear, and I'm going to be, sharing with you all the knowledge I've accumulated about tanking in Riders of Icarus. So let's start off with my gear and my stats. So as you can see, this is all my stats here. The stats that I want you to pay special attention to are my DPS, my physical defense, my magic defense, my critical damage defense, my health, my mana, my strength, my constitution, my movement speed, and my cooldown. Now, obviously, this is all for PvE because, you're going to get more or different stats from PvP gear. So this is strictly only for PvE. Now, how do I get the stats that I have? Well, let's take a look at the gear that I have. So I have Kacha the Shoulder Cat. That comes from the Legendary Riders pack, which was available when the game first released. I think it was at Steam launch. Anyways, back when the game first released, Kacha the Shoulder Cat was available with the Legendary Riders pack. Might have been available with some of the other packs as well, but it's a great item because it gives me plus 500 health, so that's really useful. My white rune cape, it doesn't give me anything. I've got a plus 11 frost, command, stalwart helm. Wow, it's a lot to say. And you can see the kind of stats that I've gone for. Constitution, strength, health. And for my sockets, I've gone with 2 Grumpy Grosses for more constitution and more health. On my pauldrons, which are also plus 11, I've got physical defense, constitution, and cooldown, as well as 2 more Grumpy Grosses socketed. On my main piece of armor, I've got strength, physical defense, and magic defense, as well as 2 more Grumpy Grosses. I've got, on my gloves, I've got strength, physical critical damage, and magic defense, as well as 2 more Grumpy Grosses. And my boots, I've got constitution, physical defense, and more constitution, and more Grumpy Grosses. In fact, I've gone with Grumpy Gross on pretty much all of my armor except for my sword, in which I've actually gone with a different familiar. This time I've gone with Uru because Uru is giving me a combination of physical attack and physical defense. And I can't socket my shield, but obviously, but if I could, I would have put more, probably not Urus. I would have put more Grumpy Grosses on it. And then it's got health and strength. So you can see the kind of stats that I'm going for on my tank. Strength, health, constitution, physical defense, magic defense, and physical critical damage. And I've gone with, pretty much that same kind of stuff on my sword as well. And that's where, obviously you can tell it's all plus 11, and my sword is plus 16, and my shield is plus 11. So you can see that's where I'm getting a lot of these stats from. I'm using a Knight Errant necklace. I know it's only level 25. It gives you a decent amount of magic defense. Obviously, if I was using something like a Bismuth booze barrel, or, one of the higher necklaces, I could be getting more magic defense, but then I would be losing the plus 15 to all stats. This also has a great amount of health, and it's got movement speed. So the Knight Errant necklace is, in my opinion, a fantastic necklace to have. For my rings, I've got 2 Hakanis hero rings because, well, plus 20 to all stats, health, movement speed. You can kind of see what I'm going for here. Movement speed, all stats, and health. Really, really nice. And you'll get one of those Icarus hero rings just by finishing the main quest line and finishing Frostkeep. The other one, well, you can either level up a second character to get that, you know, which means your second character will have to go all the way to 35 and finish Frostkeep, or you can buy it. They're not bound on obtain, they're bound on equip. So I did end up purchasing a second Hakana's Hero Ring when they weren't quite as expensive. I'm not sure how much they're going for now, but I think I got this one for maybe around 270 gold or something like that. Anyways, so those are a lot of the things affecting my stats. My skills are also affecting my stats. My guild skills, so Ardent Training, is increasing my max health and mana by 5%. I've also got Swift Conditioning, which is increasing my movement speed. And if I go to my skills, especially my passives here, so Physical Superiority is a special skill that you're gonna get by doing a quest once you get to the I can't remember the name, Farlak Outpost. Such weird names. So once you get to the Farlak Outpost and you reach 35, you'll get a quest to go and go into this area, and it'll take you, I think, 3 or 4 days, or 4 or 5 days of doing this repeatable, and then you'll get this. Then you'll be able to turn this quest in at Frostkeep, and you'll get a special book that will grant you passive. For the tank, it's Physical Superiority, and that increases your max health by 400 permanently. Let me see here. What else is affecting my stats? I think that's pretty much it. Premium doesn't have any effect on your stats. This is just my Frost Guard leader set, so that doesn't really have any effect on my stats. So when it comes to my stats, basically everything you've seen here. Now, as far as plussing my gear up, obviously I've gone and I've plussed up the things that grant me more stuff. So it's not all equal. Like my main piece of armor, right? It has the most physical defense and the most magic defense. Followed by my, well, not followed by, my shield even has more. Whereas if I look at my boots, look at that. That's a big difference. 155 to 414 base. So, you know, that's a big difference. So obviously I've plussed up the things that are more important. Plussing things up to plus 11 is not too difficult. I mean, you can get it up to plus 9 without any consequence whatsoever. Getting it to 10 is not too difficult because, you know, if you fail, then you just go back to plus 9. So getting up to plus 11 isn't too difficult. Getting it over plus 11, that starts to get expensive. And so, you know, where it starts to get expensive, I've really just kind of dedicated, you know, getting my gear up or plussing my gear on the things that are most important. So on my main piece of armor, I definitely do want to plus my shield up a little bit more, and of course my sword, because that is probably one of the most important things. Alright, now another thing that's going to affect your stats is your pets. Now, I've gotten a couple different pets here. Where are they? I've gotten a Golden Laiku that I use, I've got the Brogan Chieftain, and I got the Ruin Spectre. These are the 3 pets that I use as a tank. And they all have a varying impact on, you know, your stats. Alright, so when it comes to the Golden Laiku, you get a little bit of everything. You get health increase, you get movement speed increase, you get physical attack, magic attack, and you get physical defense and magic defense. But while you're getting a lot of everything, it's not like you're getting a lot of just one thing like some of the other pets. So if I go and I summon this, see, my DPS went up, my physical defense went up, my magic defense went up, my movement speed went up, my health went up, a lot of stuff went up. So, you know, this is a very good kind of all-rounder pet. Whereas if I desummon this, and see, it all went back to normal. This is all unmodified, by the way. I'm not using any pledges. And I summon my Brogan Chieftain. Look at that physical defense. And that's because, you know, its skills tend to favor that kind of thing. It's Constitution and physical defense. And it doesn't give you any of the other stats like the Golden Laiku does, but it gives you a lot of constitution and a lot of physical defense. So, I mean, you know, like look at this, my critical damage defense is much higher, my physical defense is much higher. I don't quite have as much health though. Like if I went with the Laiku, I think I had, whoops, I had more. Yeah, with the Laiku I do have more. And I use this other one, the Ruin Spectre, which is a heroic. He doesn't really give me very much in the way of stats, but he has something else that's really useful. He restores health. It's basically like a healing. And so when I'm doing dungeons, I can just switch between them. Like, I'll use my Golden Laiku. For some situations, I'll use my Bragan Chieftain, and then I'll just summon up my Ruin Spectre when I need some healing. He'll cast Dark Healing on me, and then I'll unsummon him, and, you know, I'll just leave Dark Healing on. And while he's desummoned, Dark Healing is actually going through its cooldown. So I can summon my Ruin Spectre, he'll heal me, I desummon him, and then a minute later I can summon him again and Dark Healing will be ready. So those are the 3 pets that I use, and they affect my stats in various ways. Now, not just your pets and your gear, but also your skills. Your pledges have a big impact on your stats, so don't underestimate them. So let's go with Pledge of Duty first. This is the Tanking's pledge. And yeah, it increased my physical defense by quite a bit. It didn't really do anything for my DPS, not really too much for my health. It did increase it a little bit, but definitely like it increased my defense a lot, and that's what it's supposed to do. See, like my health increased and my physical defense increased, so you know that's great. And if I were to couple that with my Chieftain or my Bragan Chieftain, look at this, I'm getting over almost 7,200 physical defense. And I've got a good amount of health from this. So, I mean, like, if you don't need healing and you don't really need a lot of DPS, then through the combination of these two, your pledge and this pet, wow, can you ever get a lot of physical defense? I mean, this is great for dealing with bosses because it's going to mitigate so much damage. All right, let's desummon him, and let's take off that pledge. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, so the next pledge that's really going to have a big impact on your party and on you even soloing, and it's probably the pledge I use the most, is Pledge of Power. Because it increases my DPS. Doesn't really do anything for my defense, but that's fine. It also increases my movement speed, and that's what it's supposed to do. You know, my physical attack, my physical critical rate, my movement speed, things are all really useful. Melee in your party will really appreciate this, and it does a lot for them. I mean, you know, an extra 15% increase to their physical attack. Assassins, I mean, if they got 7k or maybe even closer to 10k DPS and you add 15%, I mean, that's a huge boost. And then probably the pledge I use the least is the pledge that doesn't really affect me. Whoops. Ah, all my skills are hotkeyed to so many different things. All right, there we go. So this is Pledge of Brilliance. And Pledge of Brilliance really doesn't impact me at all. I mean, you know, it decreased my cast time, but it really didn't do anything because, you know, it increases magical critical rate, magic attack, and cast time. So this is all for casters. It has nothing to do with a tank, really. So let's take that off. So, you know, those are all the things that affect your stats. Now, I guess I should talk about, I'll talk about cooldown in a minute, but why I've gone with all the stats that I've gone. And that's because there's a lot of, it all has to do with your party, it all has to do with your role, and it all has to do with your relationship with your healer. And it also has to do with your skills. It's really complicated, actually. you know, I can't believe how complicated the classes are in Riders of Icarus. It's not simple. There's so much synergy going on. It's really crazy. Okay, so where to start? Let's start with health on a tank. Health on a tank is probably one of the biggest attributes or things that people are going to really be critical about. Now, health is really important because it has a big impact on your relationship with your healer. Your priests, they don't heal a set amount of health when they put off their heals. A lot of their heals are percentage based. So the more health you have, obviously the more hits you can take, but also the more healing you receive from your healer. So if you have 10k health and the healer hits you with a 30% healing skill, then obviously you're going to get a third of 10k back. Whereas if you have 20k health, then you're going to get a third of 20k back. So the difference there is that you're basically receiving double the healing for the priest doing the same amount of work because you have more health. And that's where health is really important. It also does let you take more hits, but it's not the be-all and end-all for a tank. As a tank, you don't want to just be all health because you will be kind of defenseless. Sure, you'll be able to take a lot of hits, or like your health acts as a buffer. That's the way I can best describe it. It's a buffer against damage. But your physical defense and your magic defense are also buffers. They're mitigators. So it's really important to get your physical defense and your magic defense up. Now, you can do that by plussing up your gear, and that's probably the preferred way. Here, let me go and change the standard mode. So by plussing up your gear, you're going to get more physical defense and you're going to get more magic defense, and that's really important for a tank. Incredibly important. And also, well, I'll talk about DPS in a minute. That's a whole different thing. So plussing up your gear is really important as a tank. If your gear's not all plus 10, well, then you're not really doing as much as you could be. In fact, ideally as a tank, like if I just go and I talk about the unrealistic ideals, all your gear should be plus 20. All of it. You want to be the best tank you can be, then all your gear needs to be plus 20. Every single thing. Because it doesn't really even matter what stats you have on your gear. It's that physical defense, that magic defense that is really, really important. Heck, you could have willpower, intelligence, and dexterity on your armor. But as long as your armor is plus 20, well, that wouldn't really particularly matter because you have the physical and the magic defense that is more important. The stats that I have on my armor here, I don't really have any control over that. You can't buy Frost Command gear. It is bind on obtain. So you get what the server or the game gives you in Frostkeep. And Frostkeep is where I got all of this stuff. I basically ran here. Let's go take a look at my achievements. Okay, so you can see I already have the Conquer the Frostkeep Heroic, and I have run this. Oh, it won't show me, but I've run it over 30 times to get the gear that I've gotten, and I've turned in that coin quest. So every 4 times I run the dungeon, I was able to trade in my coins for a chance at another piece of gear. So, I've had so many different attempts at getting the gear that I want and getting the stats that I like. These stats are not the be all and end all though, but I have chosen to go with stats that I think help. And also really important is you'll notice that all the pieces of my armor have 2 socket slots or 2 seal stone slots. That's really important. You want to prioritize gear that has the 2 seal stone slots over gear that just has 1, because those seal stones are very powerful. Now I've got all Grumpy Grosus except for my swords in my seal slots because, you know, I want that health and I want that constitution. But when it comes to my sword, I didn't want to just go all health and all constitution because, you know, DPS is also important for a tank. And that has to come down with that comes down to your role as a tank. And let's take a break from the stats and my gear for a minute. Let's talk about what you're actually supposed to be doing. As a tank, you have one job. Crowd control. That is your only job. I don't care what you think you're supposed to be doing. Crowd control is your only job. Now let's break that down a little bit. Crowd control has a lot of things associated with it. Threat generation. You need threat generation to keep the attention of all the enemies that you're fighting. You need defense. That comes in the form of health and physical and your stats. To be able to survive all that attention. And then you need to think. You need to strategize. You need to understand your team. You need to be aware. Actually, those are different things. So first of all, you need to be aware of what's going on around you. You need, you know, like maybe some mage will walk down the stairs of Frostkeep when you're fighting, you know, the mage and Sithan or whatever his name is, that Yeti. You know, if you are not aware, then that mage will come down and kill your healer. Like in two hits. I'm not joking. Like on Heroic 5, it's 2 hits, maybe even 1 hit, your healer's dead, and then you have no healing. You need to be aware as a tank. You need to know what's going on all around you, and I'm so sorry, but this probably makes a tank the most difficult class to play because not only do you have to be aware of what's happening with the boss, but you need to be aware of what's happening in the environment around you. DPS also have to, and healers also have to do that. They also have to be aware. But it's really important because you as a tank have the ability to make whatever hostiles are in your environment focus on you. Whereas, you know, your DPS and your healers don't have that same ability. And you're supposed to be doing that. So you need awareness. Second of all, you need to be smart. You need to know. And you need to watch. You need to know what the bosses or the enemies you're fighting are doing, what their skills do. You need to know, and you need to position them. As a tank, you determine how and where your group engages enemies. You need to be aware of all that stuff, and you need to position. And second of all, you need to be aware of what your group can handle. You can't just go around and aggro the entire room. Because what if they don't stay on you? As soon as one of those mobs turned around and one-shot your assassin or your healer, you just failed as a tank. Because you weren't aware of what you could do, and you weren't aware of what your party could do. And every party is different. Everyone has different gear. Everyone has a different skill level. You know, you need to gauge the ability of your party in order to be an effective tank. So there's lots of stuff going on here. Anyways, I digress a little bit. Let's get back to your role as a tank. So you're doing crowd control. And, you know, so threat generation, defense, and all that other stuff is really important. Threat generation comes from your skills, yes, but it also comes from your DPS. You know, skills like Hakene's Grasp, Binding Summons, Shield Smite, Sentinel Smash. These skills all generate threat, and when used in different combinations, they can generate even more threat. But you don't then generate threat but just through skills alone. You generate threat through damage as well. And, you know, these skills, Shield or Sentinel Smash, Shield Smite, these skills do damage. And I think you're going to find as a tank, you probably have already realized through playing this class, that if you don't do enough damage, mobs don't stay on you. It doesn't matter how much you spam your skills. You know, assassins, wizards, they can do crazy DPS. And they will pull bosses and other enemies off you if you don't have the DPS in combination with the threat generation of your skills to put yourself basically highest on that enemy's threat meter. So you need to have DPS too. And that's why I've gone with physical attack, and that's what my sword, physical critical damage, and why my seal stones I'm using Uru instead of going all grumpy gross. Now if I could, I probably would have gone with all phantoms. Phantom, the heroic wolf, sealed gives you health and all stats, but it's like, I think, plus 19 all stats. So that would have been plus 19 to my strength, plus 19 to my dexterity, plus 19 to my constitution. These are all, like, that's really, really nice. It's better than just getting, straight out constitution. Because, the more strength you have, strength adds 1.2 physical attack. The more physical attack you have, basically the better parties you can be in, because the better parties have better DPS, and to compete with those DPS you need to have better DPS as a tank. So as a tank you are always in competition with your DPS or with the DPS in your party, the damage dealers of your party, in a DPS race. If you are not trying to out DPS the DPS in your party, then as a tank you're doing something wrong. And a lot of your skills do apply other effects as well, so you want to be spamming them as much as possible, not just your aggro skills. I'll talk about skills in a minute. Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. There's one stat that I haven't even gotten to yet, and that is cooldown, and this is going to have a big impact on your rotation. I didn't mention it, but my Ruin Spectre has a cooldown decreases my cooldown by a further 4%. That is really, really nice, because cooldown is going to affect what kind of skill rotation you can do. So while I transition to talking about skills, I think this is a great time to talk about talents, because these have an impact both on your stats and on your skills. So as you can see, I've gone with talents mostly from the Aegis group. Now there's a reason for that. These Aegis skills grant a synergy for Constitution. So I'm basically getting an extra 50 Constitution just by having the synergy between these three Aegis skills. Now it depends on what you kind of want to focus on, but in my opinion, tanks are going to be grouping mostly, and even for soloing, Constitution is still helpful. When it comes to the combat ones, they give you a dexterity synergy. When it comes to the stalwart talents, they give you a strength synergy. The stalwart synergy isn't too bad, I like that DPS, but it really does affect a lot of your other skills in a different way, which I don't really think is as useful for tanking. The Aegis skills are really useful. I mean, the first one, Knight Protector. I mean, it reduces skill cooldown on some very important skills like Prevailing Blow, Sentinel Smash, Liberty Arc, Shield Smite. So these are your DPS skills here. Shield Smite, Prevailing Blow, Sentinel Smash. Where is that's Weapon Toss. That's Justice Force. Let's see here. Justice Slash. Nope. Where is it? There's Liberty Arc. Okay. So Liberty, so it gives you a reduced cooldown on some of these very important tanking skills. Shield Technique affects a lot of your shield skills again, but this time increasing their attack power. So that's going to help, with threat generation. It's going to help with your DPS. This is important, and at this point you're going to be getting one synergy by having these two skills connected, or two talents connected. Now they have to be in proximity. If I put like a red one here, a blue one here, and then a red one here, I wouldn't get this linking effect. In other words, I wouldn't get the synergy bonus. you have to have all the red skills right next to each other in order to get this red line, which means that they are linked and they are synergized. So that's how you need to put your talents together. So I've got all my red ones together, and then because I can't get any more red ones until I hit level 40, I've gone with a green one. But it's all by itself, and it's definitely not in between any of the other red skills, which would block that synergy bonus. And for the last one, I've gone for Defender of the Battlefield. So, this has some big implications for my pledges. Like attack, move speed, critical hit. It's basically making Pledge of Power stronger. The same thing for Pledge of Brilliance. It's making it stronger, and it makes everything stronger. But it also gives me another skill called Rampant Charge, which is this one right here. That's really useful if you just basically, you get pushed back or you get knocked back and then you need to get back into the fight really fast. Rampant Charge is a fantastic skill. It's also great because you can charge into a group of mobs and you can knock them down. Then you can pull them all in together, and then you can, do all the skills and stuff. It's really great. Now for the last one, I've gone with the Standard Bearer because, look at that, Binding Summons, Kane's Grasp, Bonds of Law. These are all your pulling skills. And so these three right here, Binding Summons, Kane's Grasp, and Bonds of Law, these are your pulling skills and your main threat generation skills. So, the Aegis one, I really like it because of the extra constitution, but the Stalwart one, the Stalwart one is also a very, very nice kind of alternative. One that, it might be possibly worth exploring in the future. We'll have to see how the nature of tanking kind of goes, and whether, strength or constitution is kind of more, which one benefits the tank more. Everyone is still learning. I mean, it's all still experimental at this phase in the game. A lot of people like to talk shit. Everyone likes to sound like they know everything, but the truth is they don't. Everyone's still in the process of figuring out this stuff. There is absolutely no definitive one way to be the best tank. But this is the setup I've gone with, and for me, it's working quite well so far. And I love having Standard Bearer. I probably wouldn't get rid of Standard Bearer because that cooldown on these skills is just so important. I'm probably gonna keep this Stalwart talent for the whole time I play a tank. I'm never gonna give it up. And I won't have to, because you can see, by the time we reach level 55, I'll be able to use all of the Aegis skills, and then I'll still have 2 left, so I'll probably be able to go into the Stalwart skills, and I'm going to keep Standard Bearer, and I'm going to go with Holy Command, because Royal Authority, oh yeah, very, very, very important skill. And I guess this is a great time to transition over to talking about skills. So where is Royal Authority? Here it is. This is probably your most important passive as a tank. You need to understand this skill. Activates automatically after using a Kane's Grasp or Binding Summon, so your pulling skills. Temporarily increases attack by 20%. That's really important. You as a tank, there we go. You don't have a lot of DPS. So you want to be using your skills to increase your DPS as much as possible. It's very important for threat generation. So an extra 20% on top of this, very, very, very cool. So Royal Authority is something that you need to be aware of. These other ones are pretty important, but none is as important as Royal Authority. Anyways. So let's get into talking about skills here. So, you probably know a lot about your skills already. One of the things I have to say is you need to read your skills. You really need to read your skills. I mean, you can't just go on playing and just seeing their general effects in game and then being like, okay, yeah, it does that, and then, you know, using the automatic skill linking that occurs while you're doing, while you're in combat, and just relying on that, because that is not going to really net you, like, or going to maximize the synergies between your skills. And there are so many to choose from. It's very complicated for a tank. So let's talk about Safeguard. Safeguard is probably one of your most important skills. It's a block. The only block you get. And for me, it's on a 7.6 second cooldown. So having a lot of cooldown as a tank is really nice. Because, and I know some tanks that can get up to 50% cooldown. You know, that just means that they can use Safeguard and a lot of their other skills just way more often, and they're not as limited. So, you know, there are lots of bosses in this game that like to do like one nasty skill right after the other. Basically like double nasty skill. And, you know, so having that reduced cooldown even by like a second, sometimes that can make all the difference in the world. Now, this skill is really important because it combines with other skills. Look at your Shield Smite skill. Level 3. Once you reach your level 3, activate this skill after Safeguard to increase skill attack power by 30% and decrease cooldown by 30%. So just by using your block... Oh, I can't do that right now. There we go. By using your block... And then using, well, I can't do it because I don't have a target right now. But just by using, oh, let's go out of, so I can get my stuff back. Eh. Oh, there we go. Okay. So just by using Safeguard and then using Shield Smite, you can give yourself a cooldown buff. And you can also give yourself an attack power increase. So, you know, I mean, that's an important combination. That doesn't show up when you're doing in like the linked skill suggestions when you're doing combat. It's just something you have to know. So if you didn't take the time to very carefully read your skills and understand what your skills do and how they work with other skills, you need to stop playing and go read your skill bar. Like, no joke. Like, you need to actually study your skills to be an effective tank. That is probably my first biggest tip. Aside from, you know, like all your stats, besides getting geared out, you need to study your skills. Otherwise, you will not have a very good idea of what rotations to do. And, you know, how to use your skills effectively. Like, when you hear about uber tanks that can, like, oh, I couldn't pull the mob off that tank. That tank just held aggro so well. It's because that tank read and studied their skills and has a very clear understanding of what their skills are doing, and how the skills affect each other, and they have a very good idea of what stats they need to either make up for any deficiencies in their skills, or to help you know, boost their skills' effectiveness. All right. So Safeguard is very important, and Safeguard just doesn't combo with Shield Smite. It also combos with Prevailing Blow. So in this case, it'll do something different. It'll deal 200% of the basic attack damage, and it decreases cooldown by 30%, and it greatly increases your threat level. See here? Just spamming Binding Summons, Hakene's Grasp, Bonds of Law, and also Sentinel Smash is not the only way to really affect your threat level. You can do a block. You can do, or why does it keep getting rid of that? I guess because I have to be in action mode for this to show up. You can do a block, and then you can use Prevailing Blow right after it, and that will be like the equivalent of using one of these skills, you know. And look at that, it greatly increases your threat level. If you do Hakene's Grasp, and then you do the next skill, the next link skill, which is Sentinel Smash, this will it'll increase your threat level moderately. Read the skill very carefully. It doesn't greatly increase it. It just increases it. Whereas if you do Safeguard and then you do Prevailing Blow, it greatly increases your threat level. This is not one of those linked skills. You won't see any pop-up for this on your screen when you're doing combat that tells you, hey, block now and then do Prevailing Blow. You need to figure that out on your own by reading your skills very carefully. Now, same thing with Safeguard. Rising Truth is also affected by Safeguard. So if you successfully block and use the skill, then you can gain a 200% increase. It also reduces cooldowns by 30% and greatly increases your threat level again. So look at this. You have a choice. You can block, and then you can do one of these two skills depending on what you want to achieve. This is another skill. Activate the skill after a successful Safeguard block to gain a 150% increase to basic attack damage, decreases cooldown by 30%, and greatly increases your threat level. So look at this. Basically, you have like 4 skills that you can use right after Safeguard that will have a big impact on your ability to keep aggro and also to do damage. So those are some things like that's important. You want to keep that in mind. Now, here's another one. Look at this. Hakene's Grasp. I love Hakene's Grasp. This is a fantastic skill. I mean, it pulls all the enemies around you, to you. It makes them face you for 3 seconds. Then it increases your defense by 30% for 3 seconds and activates Royal Authority, which gives you a 20% increase to your damage. Not only that, but watch what happens once you use a skill after Hakene's Grasp. Look at this. At level 15, activate the skill after Hakene's Grasp to deal damage to 5 enemies 2 meters ahead of you and greatly increase your threat level. So, like I said, like that's important. Basically what happens is once you use Hakene's Grasp, a lot of these skills, have that description with Hakene's Grasp afterwards to basically attack multiple enemies 2 meters ahead of you. It basically turns all these single target skills into AoEs. So, I mean, that's really important. But you don't get that with Binding Summons. Binding Summons just gives you Royal Authority, but it doesn't turn all your other skills into an AoE. So like Hakene's Grasp, you've probably noticed that by now. If you use Hakene's Grasp and you pull all the mobs in towards you, and then all of a sudden you're able to hit multiple enemies at once. Well, if you went and studied your skills really carefully and read up on them, that's why. Certain skills have this in their skill description that they do this thing after you activate a certain skill. Some skills do not, though. Look at this. Hakene's Hammer doesn't do anything. It's not affected by Hakene's Grasp at all. These two are. But look at this. Swift Justice. Swift Justice is not affected by Hakene's Grasp at all. The same thing here. Justice Force is not affected by Hakene's Grasp. This is where you throw your sword out, and it's a combo skill. Same thing with Weapon Toss. It's not affected. There are other skills in your, like most of my bottom skills here, except for Hakene's Hammer and Swift Justice. So everything, Liberty Arc is affected by Hakene's Grasp, but in a different way. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So a lot of these skills are affected by Hakene's Grasp, and they turn single target skills into AoE skills, which is very important for keeping aggro. Remember I said, you need to DPS as well as using threat generation, synergies, and skills in order to maintain aggro. Well, if you're hitting multiple mobs, then you're going to stay higher on their threat meter, and you won't have mobs, like groups of mobs, individual mobs in those groups pulling off of you onto your DPS, because you'll be able to hit most of them. This also requires a bit of positioning. Now, if you use Hakane's Grasp and then you use Liberty Arc right after it, well, then you can trigger an area stun attack. So if it's like your party is taking tons of damage and you just need to shut everybody down for a second, then you use Hakane's Grasp and then you use Liberty Arc. So, I mean, look at this. I mean, Safeguard and Hakane's Grasp are two of the most important skills in your entire skill thing, because so much stuff triggers off of them and is affected by them. So it's really important that you understand that. So one of the things that I really like to do is I really like to do Hakane's Grasp. This will then allow me to use Sentinel Smash, but I won't actually use Sentinel Smash. What I'll do is I'll do Hakane's Grasp, then I'll use Shield Smite, because it greatly increases your threat level, but it must be used right after Hakane's Grasp. So I can't do Hakane's Grasp and then Sentinel Smash and then Shield Smite. If I do this one, then this one, and then this one, basically my Shield Smite will be useless because I won't get that added benefit from that it generates by using it right after Hakane's Grasp. I need to use Hakane's Grasp, then I need to use Shield Smite right after it. Now I can't use Sentinel Smash normally because it's activated by Hakane's Grasp. So, but it will be, once I use Hakane's Grasp, Sentinel Smash will be usable for a certain duration afterwards, which allows me to get in one or two other skills and then still pop this one off before it becomes unusable again. Which means that I can use my Hakane's Grasp, get all the benefits from it, then I can use Shield Smite and get all the benefits by using it right after Hakane's Grasp, and then I can use Sentinel Smash and still get all the benefits from that. Because you can see it doesn't tie in to Hakane's Grasp. So, this is where things kind of, this is where, your skill order and your skill rotation really begins to get important, and it depends on what you want to do and what you're trying to achieve. You can use Hakane's Grasp, but then say use, like if you use Prevailing Blow right afterwards, well, you're not really getting a lot of benefits, because look at the skill description. Yeah, it targets multiple enemies in front of you, but you don't get any other added benefits. You'd be much better saving this skill and using it after Safeguard. Whereas, this one here, like it doesn't give you any other bonuses. Neither does this one. Like like these three skills don't give you any real benefits. So, if you use Hakane's Grasp, then you use this one. Okay, so you're, you get some aggro. You make them face you, you get a damage buff, you get a defense buff, and then you generate a little bit of extra threat. Well, if you use Hakane's Grasp, then you use Shield Smite, you get some extra defense, you get some extra attack or some extra DPS. You make them all face you, you pull them in, then you can hit all of them and generate a lot of extra threat, and then you can hit them again and deal a moderate amount of extra threat. So you see how like the best tanks are keeping aggro because they're generating all this threat through an effective usage of their skills, or an effective rotation of their skills, which does not pop up when you're in combat. Okay, so let me I'm gonna activate Pledge of Power. So let's test this out. So see here, I'm gonna activate Binding Summons. So once I activate Binding Summons, I can use Shield Smite. It's a linked skill. So by using that linked skill, I can get a little bit of a bonus. But I don't really have any benefits because it doesn't combo with any of the other skills. See, if I use I'm far better off using Hakane's Grasp, and I'll show you what I mean. So I use Hakane's Grasp. Now I can use Sentinel Smash, but I'm not going to, because watch this. Okay, so I use Kane's Grasp, then I use Shield Smite, then I use Sentinel Smash. And you can see that when I did that, I also got the skills coming up, Prevailing Blow and Rising Truth as part of my Link skills. So, you know, like I could still have time to use Sentinel Smash afterwards. But I got all the benefits of using Shield Smite right after Kane's Grasp. Now, let me go and I'll pull another one of these guys and I'll show you again. There we go. Alright, so this time he's going to attack me, but this time I'm going to use Safeguard. He attacks, I defense, and then I use my Prevailing Blow, which generates aggro. Then I can use this again, back into this skill combination, then I can start using these other skills, and they link and I can do even more damage. So you have a lot of different combinations you can use because you have different synergies between your skills, and then you have also like skill linking that's occurring. So basically what I'm trying to say here is if you only use skill linking, you're not effectively tanking. You need to go beyond skill linking, beyond using just the next skill in the line that pops up through your Link skills, and you need to be using the other skills as well that, you know, have synergies with each other if you want to tank effectively. And, you know, that is just really, really, really important. If you want to be a good tank, you need to study your skills. You need to understand what they do, how they work together, to really understand what skills you want to use in what situation, what order you want to use them in, and, you know, and kind of build some very effective rotations. And this will also increase your damage, and this will make it very hard for, you know, those crazy sins and wizards to pull aggro off of you, because you will be generating so much threat through your skill combinations and through your DPS. Now, in addition to all that, your skills do have some other effects, and there's another skill I wanted to talk about. So, Bonds of Law, activate this skill. This is a single target skill, by the way. So this is another skill that you want to use after a Kane's Grasp, and what it does is it activates, basically, it decreases movement speed and it increases your threat level. But using Kane's Grasp will also make this an AoE. So that's one thing I forgot to talk about. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Shield of Truth. Shield of Truth is a very interesting skill, and it's not one you just get by leveling up. You have to actually get a skill book for it dropped off of Heroic Frostkeep. Usually you have to run Heroic 5 in order to get it to drop. It's a rare drop. It is a tank. It is a tank class specific or guardian class specific, so you can roll on it just like any normal guardian equipment, which is nice. And, you know, once you've got this skill book to drop, you can learn this skill, and this is a very interesting skill. For 10 seconds, your magic defense, your physical defense, all get increased by 2,000%, and your critical damage defense gets increased by 300, and of course it decreases your movement speed by 70%. Those are huge. For 10 seconds, you basically become immune. It's like you become like a world boss. Like, it's crazy. However, it also has one other very significant benefit. So, in addition to doing all that, at the very bottom, hostile targets will attack you for 10 seconds. So, it's basically like a big AoE pull. Like, it is like the biggest threat generator that I can imagine. This is a very, very useful skill. Unfortunately, it's on a very long cooldown. You can reduce this cooldown through through, cooldown stats on your equipment. And so, like what your cooldown is will really affect your rotations and how often you can use your skills. But this is a great skill to have. A lot of tanks won't have this skill. It tends to be somewhat expensive and hard to obtain. You do have to be running Frostkeep Heroic 5, and if you're not running Frostkeep Heroic 5, well, then you need to basically buy it. And, well, it used to be 200 gold or 100 gold. Now it's only 50 gold. So you need to invest some money into it if you can't get that skill on your own. So, it's an important skill to have. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to talk about as a tank, and that has to do with mana. So it's kind of interesting, but the Berserker and the Assassin don't use mana. They are purely physical classes. The Assassin uses energy, and I think the Berserker uses rage. So they don't have mana per se, as far as I know. They're purely physical classes, and they only benefit from purely physical stats. However, as a tank, I'm not sure if that's necessarily true, because we have mana, and our skills use mana. And it's interesting because, like, when I use my skills on different monsters, I see them resisting the effects. And so I'm actually starting to wonder, this is not really a theory, but just kind of a question that's been popping into my mind that I haven't been able to get an answer to yet, or I'm still kind of exploring, is does intelligence and willpower actually have some effect on the application of status effects to the mobs you're attacking? I'm not sure. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But, if you're watching this, then you are a tank. But as a tank, that might be something to just kind of keep in the back of your mind. Is the tank purely just a physical class? Or is it more of a magic physical hybrid? That is something that you really need to think about. Like these pledges, for example, they're not really physical. They're kind of magical in nature. Bonds of law, again, like it's applying kind of an effect to the enemy that they have a chance to resist. The same thing here. Where is it? Sentinel Smash. They can resist the effect of Sentinel Smash. There are a lot of other effects here that they can resist. So I don't know. I don't know what the story is behind that. It's just something to think about. Something that I've been wondering. Because like it's not like Nexon or We Made Entertainment came out and told us exactly how every small thing in this game works. So I'm, just kind of thinking to myself, like how all this stuff kind of works. And, as a tank, don't underestimate the use of mana. Long boss fights, especially when you're by yourself and you're not in a group, to help provide you mana, you will lose quite a bit of mana. And I've actually, on some rare occasions, especially when I'm soloing, I've had to use mana potions. And that does get me back to another thing I wanted to talk about, and that is kind of combat aids, as I call them. So potions and food. Food, I think as a tank, you should invest in alchemy and you should invest in cooking. Food is really helpful, especially if you're soloing and you don't have like someone to heal you, and you do have to just kind of, sit down and rest. Just sitting down and resting like this, it does give you this little passive. It increases your recovery speed. But I mean, come on, if you have 20k health, that is going to take a long time. Whereas if you use the food, It'll help you recover your health faster without having to use potions. Potions are, by comparison, far more expensive to produce and far more limited. Especially these 100% health recovery potions that you get from having premium status and that you can get through certain in-game daily rewards. These things are very precious, and if you do a lot of soloing, well, you can end up going through a lot of them, so it makes them a precious resource. That's why I've turned to crafting my own potions. So, you know, I've gotten my cooking all the way up. It's all the way at stage 4, although I can't get the fresh meat in order to actually craft any of this stuff. I am getting the I can produce the chewy glaze hunch because I can get chewy meat. And, you know, that is going to save me from having to use a lot of my potions. I also have my potions maxed out. Well, except for the mana ones. I might max them out later. And I can produce, well, a lot of the different potions. The first thing you need to produce at stage 3 is 25, which requires Chirpa Flowers and Simple Dark Essence. From those, you can then produce the level 30 health elixirs with more Chirpa Snow Flowers and more Simple Dark Essence. Then from those, but now here's the great thing about alchemy though. If you produce 25, or let me use a different number. If I produce 50 level 25 health elixirs, then through the crafting process, because you have a chance to produce more than one item for every crafting attempt that you make. Sometimes you can produce 2, and if you triumphantly craft, you can produce 3 for just the materials of 1. So the way I kind of like to work it out is if you produce 50 of these level 25 health elixirs, then you're basically going to end up with like 55 to 60 level 30 health elixirs once you're done crafting them through through triumphant crafts and extra crafts while you're doing that. So you're going to end up with even more. Then you can go to the level 20 elite health elixirs, which requires the level 30 and then just some cheap bottles. And again, through triumphant crafts and other stuff, you're going to end up with even more than even more. Like you could end up, like you started with 50, you got 60 of these. By the time you're finished crafting all your level 20 elite health elixirs, you could have 70 of them. Then you can go on to the level 20 heroic health elixirs, which require, you know, the health elixirs you've already crafted plus some average bottles. Again, through the triumphant crafts and the extra crafts that you get, you will end up with even more of them without having to gather any other materials, like any more Chirpa Flowers. So the alchemy is highly rewarding, and it's very beneficial as a tank, because here, let me show you. These things give you roughly 1,300 health back. That's not that impressive. Level 31s give you almost 1,500 health back. Still, that's not that impressive. The elite ones, well, now they're giving you around 2,000 back. That's a bit more impressive. The heroic ones are giving you 2,700 health back. That's more than double what the level 25 and it's definitely double what the level 30 ones are giving you. So, I mean, you can only use these potions once every 30 seconds, so the more health you can get from each, the better. And through the triumphant crafting and procking process, you will end up getting way more level 20 heroic health elixirs than you will if you just simply craft the level 30 ones. So, alchemy, cooking, these two things are very, very useful as a tank, especially for soloing and, of course, for helping you in your dungeon runs, just to help you survive some very simple things. Like, let's say your healer's not going to get a heal off in time. You just need a few extra 1,000 health to help you survive something. You can thus then pop a potion. You get 2,700 health back. It just lets you survive that half a second until the healer's able to get that heal off and then restore your health by 30%. So that is, you know, very important. So there are lots of different things that go into making you a good tank. effective, effective play, appropriate gear, a good understanding of your skills, effective use of aids, effective use and choice of pets. There's probably another trick I should probably show you. You should have a very good knowledge of how your pets work. So, see, there's my Broggan Chieftain. So if I use Alt+1, I can change his modes to attack mode, defense mode, and then standby mode. If I use Alt+3, so these are the hotkeys, then see this like little red circle? I can tell him to go someplace, and as long as he's on standby mode, he'll just stay there. So I can position my pet outside of harm's way, so I can get their passive bonuses and not having to worry about them following me into the very dangerous close encounters that I have with various enemies and their skills. And then I can use Alt+2, and then he'll come and he'll follow me. And of course I can control some of his other skills. So that's an important thing you want to know. The last important thing I want to talk about as a tank, it's very important to hotkey your skills. Now you can see I have a third bar here. How did I get that? Character settings, or not character settings, just settings, game. Expanded slots opens an additional 12 skill slots. Just by clicking that, I get this extra row. And it is very important to hotkey your skills. See how I've actually changed how I've hotkeyed everything. I've got 1 through 10 here, or 1 through 0 plus the dash and the equal sign, so 1 through equals. Now, I think by default it goes up and starts using your F keys, like F1, F2, F3. I find that incredibly cumbersome. In fact, I don't even want to press 1, 2, 3, 4 on my keyboard. Instead, I have a Corsair Scimitar mouse, which has a number keypad on the side of the mouse that goes all the way from 1 to 12 and basically covers all the buttons 1 through the equal sign. And so that's what I use. And so I have to use my first skill bar, I can just press the buttons on the side of my mouse. For the second skill bar, I have everything hotkeyed to shift and then plus the number. So all I have to do is hold down shift and then press the same keys on the side of my mouse, and I can use all the skills on my second hotbar. Then for my third, I have them all hotkeyed to control plus, the numbers again, so I can hold down control and then I can use the numbers on the side of my mouse again to activate all of these skills. Or rather, I've hotkeyed pets and potions and stuff like that, stuff that's useful. And that's very important because as a tank, you need to be able to activate your skills relatively quickly, especially since you're responding to the actions taken by your group and by the enemies you fight. So it's very important to be able to activate your skills very quickly. Now, when the skill linking comes up, sometimes you have to press R, sometimes you have to press C, sometimes you have to press Shift R. I find that cumbersome because as long as I'm, using the hotkey that I've assigned on my skill bars, I can still activate those skills regardless of whatever buttons the game is telling me to press in order to use the link or to link them. So as a tank, that's another thing that I find really important. Make sure that you're hotkeying all your abilities. You can do that by going to settings, key bindings, and then you just kind of come down here and look at this, your basic slots. So I've got 1 through 6, here, and then for my basic slot 7. So I don't know, it kind of works weird. But I don't know why this is basic slot 7 up here, but it is. And then this is somehow basic, I don't know, it's like they divided this skill row into 2 groups. It's weird. Anyways, this is how I hotkey my stuff, and then for the expanded slots, you can see I'm using control. And that's how I've set that up. And so I've basically got normal key button, normal number buttons, then I've got shift plus all the same number buttons, then I've got control plus all the normal buttons. And that's the setup I have, and I find that works great for tanking. I'm able to activate my skills incredibly quickly. I've memorized all of it. I no longer have to think about it. It's all just second nature and habit. So I'm able to, so regardless of what skill pops up on my screen or what skill I want to combo after, I can activate that skill very quickly without having to take my attention off of what's happening in front of me. As a tank, you definitely need to be paying attention to what's happening in front of you, like the skills that the bosses are casting, what your enemies are doing, and how your group's moving, all that stuff I mentioned. You need to be aware of what's happening around you, so you don't want to be fiddling around with activating your skills while you're tanking, because you need to be, like, that's kind of the last thing you need to be thinking of. You want to be thinking more at a more strategic level, a more tactical and strategic level. Okay, I'm activating this skill. I want to activate this next skill to get this benefit, and then this skill, you know. You don't want to think about, okay, well, how do I do that? Wait a minute, where's the key that I have to press? You don't want to be fumbling around with any of that, especially on a tank, because it's going to just slow you down to the point where you're not going to be able to do all the other things that you need to do. Wow. Okay, so I have talked for a long time. I've shown you guys basically everything that I know, everything. I've shown you all my stuff. Oh, one other thing I haven't talked about, and that is titles. So what titles do I want to use? I'm using a Loon Exemplar. This is a title that you get for spending 1,000 Aloons in the game. Yes, it does require you to sink some money into the game to buy Aloons so that you can spend them. It increases my drop rate by 1%. That's really important. I mean, most of the time that you're running a dungeon or you're attacking mobs, it's because you're trying to farm something. So having a drop rate bonus is great, and it gives me extra constitution. There are lots of other titles that I can go for. Here, let's go into acquired. I could go for the Brakar Forest Explorer. Those aren't that great. I could go for the Knight Errant for extra health. I could, you know, go for these other skills like the Phantom Tamer. I mean, it's all stats plus health. Or I could go, well, the Karev Tamer is better, all stats plus physical attack. Those are all okay, but I think the Loon Exemplar is probably the best one for that extra constitution. Just gives you a little bit of extra health in that drop rate, so that's what I use. So, yeah, so basically if you want to get the gear that I have, go run Frostkeep a lot. That's it. I haven't even worried about combining the Corrupt armor with the Frost armor. You can do that to get more constitution, but I don't really see the point. I mean, look at this. I get, as set effects, I get the constitution, I get physical critical rate increase, I get physical attack and cooldown, and then for the set effects at +5, I get mana plus that physical defense. I mean, you know, mana is important for a tank. You don't want to run out, especially if you're soloing. And physical defense is very important, you know. So another thing that's going to be really important in how you gear out your tank is looking very closely at the set effects of the armor that you're wearing and choosing them appropriately. Usually I think We Made Entertainment or Nexon has done a very good job of, you know, putting in stats that are relevant to your class. And I think for the most part you should follow that as a general guideline. Anyways, I've talked a lot about tanking and stuff. Thank you so much for listening and for your patience and watching through all this. I hope this helps, and I hope this helps you improve your tanking. And remember, it's all still a learning process. No one is the be-all and end-all or of knowledge when it comes to tanks. Don't be afraid to try things out and experiment. Don't be intimidated by people who talk shit to you and just like to, you know, make themselves sound like they know everything, because the truth is, in this game, no one really knows everything, you know? So take everything with a grain of salt and explore and find out what works for you. Anyway, I've shown you what works for me, and like I said, I hope that helps. This has been Sorvesteon. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to my channel for more videos about Riders of Icarus. Until next time, fellow adventurers, take care and have fun.